Love, in its truest form, is not loud. It does not parade itself in clichés or scripted gestures. It is a movement of the soul, often subtle, often hidden, often speaking in symbols far more potent than words. When a man is in love, he may not always say it, but he will show it through the language of his unconscious. The signs are not always in the spotlight. They dwell in the shadows, in the overlooked, in the silence between sentences. When a man is in love, his presence shifts from mere proximity to a sacred offering. He no longer occupies space to be seen or to impress. Instead, his energy calms the atmosphere, grounding it with something unspoken but deeply felt. You may not notice it at first. It won't be loud or grandiose. But over time, you begin to realize that when he is near, you breathe easier. Your guard softens. Your inner world no longer feels like something that needs to be hidden. He doesn't seek to entertain you or steal the moment's attention. He doesn't perform, he dwells, quietly, steadily, as if saying, "I'm here not for applause but for truth." His presence becomes a quiet invitation to be who you are without judgment. He listens not only with his ears but with his entire being, absorbing the emotions behind your words, respecting the silences that carry your unsaid truths. You feel seen without being inspected, heard without being analyzed. You find yourself wanting to speak, not because you're trying to be understood, but because it feels safe to simply express. In a world where people often shout to be noticed, his calm attention becomes a sacred refuge, a place where the noise dies down and the real you comes forward. And in his gaze, there is no hunger to possess, only an openness to receive you as you are. He doesn't interrupt your unfolding or try to direct your growth. He is simply with you, patiently, consistently, reverently. His presence becomes a mirror of stillness in which you begin to rediscover parts of yourself you forgot you had buried. In that shared quiet, you find a kind of wordless love, the kind that doesn't need constant explanation, because it is felt in the very way he holds space for your soul. This is not romance for show. This is love that shelters, love that holds, love that does not rush. It is in this sanctuary of presence that the deepest kind of intimacy begins, not through fireworks, but through the steady glow of someone who simply stays. When a man truly loves you, he does not simply offer you comfort. He begins the quiet, often brutal journey of confronting the storms within himself, so they do not spill into the space you share. He becomes aware, perhaps for the first time, of how easily unhealed wounds can wound others. He notices the sharp edge of his words, the weight of his silence, the ghosts of his past that knock at the door of the present. And rather than pretending those shadows aren't there, or blaming you for triggering them, he turns inward. He chooses the harder path not of denial, but of reckoning. This is not an easy process. To love deeply is to risk exposure, and love will inevitably shine a light on the chaos within. But a man in love begins to understand that the peace he desires with you cannot coexist with the unconscious turmoil he's carried for years. So, he does not project his anger, he investigates it. He does not unleash his fears onto you, he sits with them in the dark, learning their language. He takes responsibility for the pain that is his, and in doing so, he shields you from becoming collateral damage in a war that started long before you entered his life. This work is invisible, but it is immense. It is not glamorous. There are no grand declarations, no fireworks of emotional breakthrough that play out for an audience. It happens in the silence of his own solitude, when he questions his habits, when he revisits old wounds, when he chooses stillness over reaction, self-reflection over blame. It's when he feels the old urge to withdraw or lash out, and instead, he chooses to breathe, to wait, to understand, not because you told him to, not because he's trying to be perfect, but because your presence in his life has awakened a higher calling in him, the desire to protect what is sacred. And he knows that protecting you does not just mean standing in front of you when danger comes. It means standing guard against the parts of himself that could hurt you. That kind of protection is not physical, it's spiritual, emotional, psychological. It is the quiet vow he makes with his soul. I will not let the chaos within me poison what is good between us. That is the love that does not ask you to carry his burden. It is the love that says, I see my darkness, I own it. I will not let it become your suffering. That is how a man begins to offer you peace, not by being flawless, but by being fiercely devoted to inner truth. That is the love that heals, not harms. When a man is truly in love, the illusion begins to dissolve. He no longer projects onto you a perfect image sculpted by fantasy, desire, or cultural expectation. He begins to see you, not as an ideal to chase or a role to fulfill, but as a living, breathing mystery to approach with reverence. He notices your contradictions, your edges, your history, and your fears, and instead of turning away, he leans in, not to fix you, not to mold you into his version of who you should be, but to understand, to witness, to honor who you already are beneath the layers. He does not love you because you are easy to understand or always pleasing. He loves you because, in your depths, he recognizes a kind of sacred complexity, a soul unfolding, a landscape full of hidden rivers and unexplored terrain. He understands that you are not static, you are evolving, changing, becoming, and he does not try to stop that process. He does not shrink from the unknowns you carry. Instead, he meets them with curiosity and devotion, willing to walk beside you without needing to label or control the journey. This kind of seeing is not passive. It is an act of deep attention. He watches how you respond to the world, how your face softens when you're moved, how your voice trembles when you speak your truth, how your silence speaks louder than your words. He sees how your wounds shape your strength, how your laughter is laced with both joy and history. He does not ask you to smile more or talk less. He does not seek to smooth you out so you fit neatly into the contours of his comfort. Instead, he lets you be jagged, raw, radiant, incomplete, and still beautiful. When he sees you this way, he does not idolize you. He humanizes you. He lets you be real. He allows your darker moments, your doubts, your desires to breathe without flinching. He does not fall in love with a fantasy. He rises into love with your truth. And in doing so, he becomes trustworthy, because only someone who sees your whole being and chooses to stay is capable of love that lasts beyond the surface. He no longer asks, "What can she be for me?" but instead wonders, "Who is she becoming and how can I honor that?" This shift, from possession to presence, from expectation to wonder, is the sign that his love is not rooted in need, but in genuine reverence. You are no longer a symbol to complete him. You are a universe he desires to explore, not to conquer, but to understand, and that kind of love never seeks to end your mystery. It lives to keep discovering it. When a man truly loves you, his presence is not conditional. He does not only appear when the sky is clear, when laughter is easy, or when your joy is effortless. He does not vanish when your light dims or your voice trembles. Love reveals itself not in moments of comfort, but in the crucible of difficulty. When things become uncertain, when emotions run deep and messy, when you are not your most graceful self, that is when the truth of his heart is shown, and if his love is real, he doesn't run from your shadows. He walks into them with you, not to rescue, but to remain. He does not flinch when your wounds rise to the surface. He does not see your struggles as burdens or your vulnerability as weakness. Instead, he treats these moments as sacred. He understands that love is not just about celebrating who you are when you're shining. It's about holding you steady when you're unraveling, when your past tries to haunt the present, when the weight of the world presses on your chest, when you feel unlovable, unworthy, undone. He does not retreat. He doesn't offer shallow comfort or dismiss your pain with hollow words. He stays, fully, quietly, completely. He knows that being present when it's hard requires more than words. It demands patience, strength, and emotional maturity. He learns how to sit with discomfort, not to fix you, but to make sure you don't face the storm alone. He doesn't need you to pretend you're fine. He wants your truth, even when it shakes. And when you push him away out of fear or doubt, he doesn't punish you with silence or withdrawal. Instead, he anchors himself softly, firmly, so you know he's not going anywhere just because the terrain got rough. Love, real love, is proven not in flowers or poetic promises, but in those gritty, raw, human moments when everything feels uncertain. It's when you cry without knowing why, and he doesn't try to make you stop. He just holds the space. It's when life hits you hard, and he shows up without needing to be asked. It's when things between you are tense, yet he chooses to understand instead of attack, to reach instead of recoil. He values the connection enough to do the hard work of staying. He may not always know the right thing to say. He may not always have solutions, but his commitment shows through his presence, through his willingness to grow alongside you, to weather the inner storms with you. His love becomes a kind of lighthouse, unmoving, reliable even when the waves rise. That kind of love isn't convenient, it's courageous, and in the dark, it becomes a kind of light. When a man loves you deeply, he becomes a mirror, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reflects your truth, even the parts you've forgotten or tried to hide. He does not simply echo your words or mimic your interests to gain your affection. His reflection is not shallow imitation. It is soulful resonance. His presence in your life begins to stir something deeper within you, not because he says all the right things, but because he sees the parts of you you've abandoned. And by seeing them without fear or judgment, he invites you to remember yourself. This mirroring is not always gentle. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, even confronting. Because to be seen in this way means the masks begin to fall away, the ones you wear to survive, to please, to protect. And yet, he does not flinch when your layers unravel. He does not love only the parts of you that are polished or poetic. He holds space for your wholeness, your chaos, your confusion, your brilliance, your buried pain. In doing so, he reflects not who you pretend to be, but who you are becoming, not who the world expects, but who your soul longs to remember. He challenges you, not to control you, but to help you grow. He doesn't let you shrink into smallness or hide behind fear. He asks the difficult questions, the kind that stir old truths and disrupt old patterns. He may unintentionally awaken the wounds you've silenced, not to harm you, but because love naturally brings what's hidden into the light. And in the discomfort of that unveiling, he stays. He does not fear your intensity. He does not run from your depth. Instead, he reflects your potential, your purpose, your power, especially when you have forgotten how to see it yourself. Through his love, you start to hear your own voice more clearly. You feel your own soul more vividly. He becomes a kind of spiritual catalyst, not your savior, not your teacher, but your mirror. And this kind of mirroring isn't about praise or validation. It's about awakening. It's about calling forth the deeper parts of you, the parts that remember why you came here, what you carry, and who you are beneath the noise of the world. In his reflection, you don't just see someone who loves you. You see someone who believes in you. Someone who doesn't need you to be perfect, but needs you to be you. That kind of love doesn't try to change you into something else. It helps you shed what you are not, and in doing so you begin to rise, not for him but through him. Not to meet his expectations, but to meet your own soul again. And that is the kind of love that doesn't just comfort, it transforms.